Hello, everyone. Welcome to our International Artist Day conference. I'm Jeff Sass, the CMO of .art Registry, and on behalf of Olvi and the entire .art team, I want to welcome you today and thank you for joining us on this very special day. As you may know, the .art Registry is behind the .art domain zone, but also it's important to mention that everything we do supports the Art Therapy Initiative. This is our charitable mission to spread awareness and access to the healing powers of art. And this is a very personal mission for the .art team, inspired by Ovi and Rayhan's daughter, Medina, who as a child had some real challenges affecting her speech and communication skills. And through art, she literally found her voice. And today she's a very successful young artist. So we've seen firsthand how art can have healing benefits, and it's important to us to spread that. So thank you for being with us today. You are helping us spread that important mission, and we really appreciate it. Before we begin the conference, I have a very special guest I wanted to introduce briefly. Today, of course, is International Artist Day. This is something that's been happening every October 25th, Picasso's birthday, for the past 20 years. And I have with us today one of the three co-owners of International Artist Day, Maurice Cardinal. And I want to give Maurice the floor for a moment to say a few words about International Artist Day. Welcome, Maurice.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. We are. Chris McClure, he launched this in 2004. So yeah, we're 20 years into it with his wife Marilyn Hurst, both artists in their own right, and I'm also an artist, a fine photographer, and yeah, so it's exciting. We're talking to a lot of people today around the world. International Artist Day has been it's been prevalent with a lot of artists. The New York Met, National Film Board of Canada, the Sundance Institute, National Galleries of Scotland, Juilliard, Guildhall School of Art in London, National Endowment for the Arts. There's quite a host of organizations and people. Cirque du Soleil, one of the great performing artist organizations, they mentioned us, regularly, and even Haagen-Dazs ice cream, which is a treat. They did a whole dance troupe one year and spent a whole year celebrating it. So it's exciting to be here. We also are excited about working with art therapy, and that's one of our directions too. So it's nice to hear that .art does the same thing. I think art therapy is incredibly important. Art helps so many people around the world, and we do our little bit in our corner of the world just to help people understand what's going on and make them feel comfortable about who they are.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Maurice. And thank you and Chris and his wife for starting International Artist Day. I'm sure Pablo Picasso somewhere in the ether is happy that his birthday is being celebrated in such a global fashion through International Artist Day. So thank you for joining us today and for telling us a little bit about International Artist Day and for everything you do. And we appreciate it very much. And we hope to continue to do this every International Artist Day. It's a good day for us to celebrate.
Thank you. Thank you. Our pleasure.
So,
thanks again.
Thank you, Maurice. So now we'll bring on my co-host for today, Anastasia, and we've got a terrific lineup of speakers. So I want to let us get right to the show. So Anastasia, I'll turn it over to you to introduce our first speaker as we kick off the International Artist Day conference.
Thank you, Jeff. Hi, everyone. My name is Anastasia. I've been with .art for a few years, and I have to say we've celebrated a few artist days, and this one is definitely the most exciting one to date as we're about to kick this off. Without further ado, let me present our first speakers, Shantell Martin and Sophia Wallace. Shantell Martin is known for her striking black and white line drawings exploring the theme of identity. Her work has been showcased at the MoMA, the New York City Ballet, and the Denver Art Museum, and she has collaborated with brands like Tiffany & Co., Puma, and the North Face. I'm really just touching base here on Shantell's body of work, and let me just quickly add that she was one of the first of adopters who have a go.art domain. So we're incredibly excited to have you here, Shantell. And Shantell will be interviewed by another incredible artist, Sophia, who is a conceptual artist and photographer celebrated for her project Cliteracy, which addresses the widespread cultural ignorance around anatomy and representation in relation to gender and sexuality. Please have the floor. These two powerhouse women, it's incredibly humbling to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anastasia. Actually, I feel like I need to admit that I actually got a .art domain because I saw that Shantell had it. And Shantell, your websites are always totally on point and very inspiring. So I was like, oh, I love this space that is like, it is commercial, but this is about art, and it doesn't have to be within .com, .org, .net. It felt right to be in the .art space. So that's just a funny connection. But what I want to start talking about, Shantell, I've seen and enjoyed and been kind of moved by your work for many years, and continue to kind of be surprised and delighted by what you do. And one thing that I think is really unusual for an artist who has the reach and the success that you have is that I feel that you have a very inclusive and positive message towards artists. I think that many of us have been taught that the career of art is very difficult. There's too many artists. There's not enough opportunity. We're positioned against each other with these grant opportunities or show opportunities, and we have to kind of compete. And I see with your new project, Provenance, and even, what you've been doing for a very long time, just really inviting people into your process, sharing how you're thinking about things, sharing how you work, and trying to encourage and uplift other artists. So in this day that's celebrating artists, I'm just curious what you think about artists and competition, and how you've come to this place of sort of generosity in your practice.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's a very kind of introduction. And I'm glad you have a .art too. Someone said to me, inspiration is invitation. So it looks like that invitation for you work there. I'm a big believer in collaboration over competition. And I think inherently that's always been a part of my DNA. I think even earlier on in my career, when I was a VJ in Japan, a visual jockey doing visuals to DJs, dancers, and musicians, people would reach out to me and say, how do you do this? And I would take time to just break down every single step is how you can do this. And, I think there's something very rewarding about creating, but exposing the process, kind of giving the keys away, inviting people in. And I think there's been many moments, even when I first started social, I started a kind of a hashtag called Saturday Showcase, where I would showcase other artists on my feed. Right now I have What's the Point, which is a podcast where I sit down with other artists and find out about their stories. And, I think there's something really special when artists support artists, because as you mentioned, we have this big system that has been constructed in a way to make artists feel powerless, to make them feel like they're in competition, to make them feel like they're not in control of their own path, and they have to wait for someone else to give them permission to make and to create. And it's been fun, but challenging to kind of go against that and say, well, if I'm not an insider, I'm going to be an outsider on the inside, on the outside, and I'll create my rules, my own rules, but by using what I have access to.
That's incredible. It's very inspiring, because I think that there's a lot of advice that is given to artists about, is this career practical? Is it financially unrealistic? Should we be pursuing other things? And then at the same time, when we do commercialize our work, then people have feedback about that. And sometimes there's pushback about, well, it's not real art if it's in this way or it's in that way. I look to your practice as really being this beautiful kind of rule breaking example of like thriving as an artist, being really creative, being a successful businesswoman, and supporting other artists. Could you talk a little bit about how you've navigated this sort of financial ideology around like pure art and what collaborations are acceptable and what aren't?
Yeah. You know, the idea of pure art as a concept is a privilege. And I think those that say, hey, you know, as an artist, you shouldn't talk about your finances, you shouldn't do commercial work, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, it will devalue your work. What a privilege of you to be able to say what someone else should do with their career. And also, how dare you? You know, I think art in a way is something where it's borderless, it's boundless. You know, as artists, we have the biggest freedom to create what we want, how we want, wherever we want, regardless of the medium or the industry or who's actually getting paid. At the end of the day, you know, and I point this out to a lot of artists who have this kind of a disposition in, I don't want to talk about that. I don't really want to understand how the finances or the mechanisms work, or I'm scared to go into kind of more commercial work, because they've been trained by the system. You know, at the end of the day, as a living artist, you create the work and people consume it. That's a very simple path from the creator to the consumer. But now we have this whole system of people in between. The galleries, you know, the art advisors, the creators, the critics, the, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we have a system where it's okay for them to understand the inner workings of art, the finances. They can talk about all of those things, but it's not okay for the artist, even though an integral part of their work is that the work, ideally, in a good situation for a lot of artists, is that the work goes to a gallery and gets sold. And I often point out, you know, if your goal is to have your work, you know, be fine art and it goes to a gallery, like, what do you want to happen? They're like, we want it to go with collectors and be sold. And I say, well, what's it being sold for? Money. Okay. So that is an integral part of your work and an end result or goal. And not that you need to be a finance wizard, but I think with any career, it's good to know about the inner workings and the mechanism of the machine that you're a part of. So if you are an artist and you're not coming down a very privileged path where someone can pay for lawyers and all of these things for you, you should know a little bit about taxes. You should know a little bit about legal. You should know a little bit about your profit and loss. You should know a little bit about insurance. You should know a little bit about all of those things, because they're an integral part of the inner workings of what it is to be an artist today. And for those who have said that that will devalue your work, you know, not to be rude, but you've all come down very privileged paths where you've never had to worry about how you're paying your rent or how you're paying for your food that week. Yeah. So, you know, that's kind of my thoughts there. And I think the more that we can be transparent, and the more that we can say, like, hey, we shouldn't have boxes and hurdles between the type of work that we do. You know, if I'm doing something with Tiffany & Co. or at the same time in the museum, it's still my art. It's just a different kind of stage for it to appear. And so for me, I don't make a distinction between the medium or the industry.
Do you find that working with collaborators who are in the fine art space versus brands is a very different experience in terms of how they talk about your work, or how on the client side they relate to your work? Or is it more about just relationships and collaboration and work with people that you connect with?
Yeah, it's exactly that. I don't see the distinction. You know, for me, if I'm doing a project where, you know, it's going through a brand and I'm getting paid 100%, or if I'm doing something with an institution or a gallery and I'm getting paid 50%, you know, like, the money bit doesn't matter. You know, it's just that you're getting more or less. What actually matters is who you're collaborating with, what you're creating. Does this project give you the freedom to create something perhaps you wouldn't do by yourself? Does it expose the work to a different demographic? Is it something that challenges you? And this could be education, academia, it could be sports, it could be technology. You know, there's so many ways and places where we can put our art. And I think it's often like music, you know, for the people to want to sell it, they have to be able to put it in a very small box so that they can generalize it and then talk about it. And if you're expanding a lot of different mediums and industries, it's actually quite hard for them to confine it and talk about it. And it might not make sense to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I'm struck by your very clear-eyed way of describing the systems within which our art appears and exists. And it's really nice to hear it talked about that way, because it is like anything else. We can understand the system, and once we have that knowledge, we can figure out how we want to negotiate within that. But if everything is kept kind of behind closed doors, or we ourselves think that we don't have permission to negotiate a contract, for example, or to decide that our IP is something we want to protect and we're not going to rely on someone else to do that for us, like, we need to understand how these things work.
And I was having a conversation last night actually with there was a few kind of executives from different companies, and they were all like, oh yeah, we work with artists. And, you know, we got onto the conversation of like the type of agreements that they use for artists. And they said, well, you know, it's just standard that we have to own the work from the artist that we work with. And I'm like, no. You can't champion the fact that you work and support with artists and then at the same time say that you need to own their work. I said, that's laziness, and it actually doesn't support the artist. You know, if you're getting them to sign crappy agreements where you own everything for perpetuity, that's not support. And you shouldn't be kind of, you know, showcasing the fact that you're exploiting artists in that way. But, you know, for me, I can point those things out because I read a lot of contracts. And I met an artist this week and he's like, I got my first kind of contract, you know, can I send it to you? Like, would you give me some advice? And I looked at it and it was terrible. And I said, I would never sign it because of this, and this, and this. And I think that's the thing, is that we have a lot of institutions, we have a lot of companies, you know, from all of the spectrum that are not really making sure that the agreements and the contracts that they ask artists to sign are matching up with their intentions or platform to try and support the artists.
That's right. Yeah, and I think it's a really good point, because it's the rhetoric of support is very easy to offer, but if you look at the money, you can kind of see where the values are very quickly, right? In any situation.
Yeah.
And that, you know, as you were talking, I was thinking about I don't remember if it was a petition or what it was, but you spearheaded a piece that ended up, I believe I read about it in the New York Times. It could have been in Hyperallergic, but during the Black Lives Matter rebellion, there were all of these Black artists who were being courted and given horrible opportunities and being told that this is in their benefit, and terms were egregious and problematic, and in a way is sort of contrary to even the idea of support, because it was like abusing and using artists to give themselves credibility, and at the same time totally undervaluing the artists and not having. Could you talk a little bit about that, if you're open to it?
Yeah, I worked with a few other artists to create a petition called We Are Relevant, which basically, you know, kind of demanded, you know, more transparency with regards to contracts, agreements when we work with artists. You know, a lot of the time that is about exploitation versus support and collaboration. And so it was and is about that, just kind of the transparency, accountability, and the responsibility when you engage and work with an artist. And we had other artists kind of stand and support that sentiment.
Yeah, amazing. I really appreciated that you did that, because I think a lot of people feel that there's a big pushback if they put themselves out there in this way. And so it takes a lot of bravery to be the one to stand in that place and advocate for everyone else. But it's so important. And I think as artists, when we do come together, we have so much power because our work is so powerful, but also we together are so creative. I'm interested in what's some piece of feedback that you received in your career where at the time it just felt brutal and like devastating, but over time stayed with you and you found out that it was actually helpful and useful.
I don't think I've had kind of a brutal feedback, but I think kind of the most helpful feedback I've had, and it's not feedback, it's kind of more of a suggestion, is like, and this was earlier on, like, hey, Shantell, if you want to be a successful artist, you have to see it as a combination or a cocktail of things. So you have to do an audit of your strengths and your weaknesses. So are you social? Are you organized? Do you like to go out? Can you talk to people? Are you a good public speaker? Can you do your taxes? Is your work archived? What are all the things that you are good at? What are all the things that you are not good at? And then focus on them to kind of level out the playing field there. Because otherwise you'll just look and be like, well, why has another artist got that and got that and got that? I could do that. I could do that. Why not me? And, typically it's because of those things. Maybe you don't go out and you don't want to talk to people and you're not that sociable, or you're a little bit shy, or you're not that organized or prepared when someone says, hey, let's do something. You don't follow up. You're not good at emails. I think that really stuck to me of like, hey, like at that time, I'm not very sociable. I'm a bit shy. Like I don't like to go out. I don't know anything about taxes. I've never organized my work, so those are things that I really took on and was like, well, let me just really take a look at everything and see what's missing and see what needs to be kind of worked on.
That's beautiful. My last question is about exploration and creative risk. And in a recent interview of yours that I watched, you were talking about kind of being a little bit quieter for a while and needing to sort of, or perhaps feeling the need to sort of be like, what am I doing now? And this sort of ongoing question that artists often are asked, like, well, what are you making now? What are you making now? And, and, being both rooted in where you are now, open to the future, connected to the past, but able to have change. And I think sometimes when an artist is known for certain work and certain work is beloved, there's also that work can become a little bit of a weight or a little bit of pressure that can kind of hinder the space to explore. And I was wondering if there was anything that you wanted to share about how you're feeling in terms of like having space for your own creative risk taking.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I feel like, especially with my work, there's definitely a big flag that people are familiar with. It's big, it's bold, it's black and white, it's lines. People are like, oh, that's Shantell. But beneath that flag, there's a whole body of curiosities, explorations, experiments, collaborations that people haven't seen. And I was thinking about this recently with a friend. I was at MIT for a couple of years and I worked on a whole bunch of projects. I've been curious about anthropology and photography, but I've never really had a chance to showcase these because just kind of the constraints of time and money, essentially.
Totally. Yeah. And I think that's like always the sort of the artist's struggle is like trying to explore and take risks within these like very limited constraints of like a certain amount of time, a certain deadline, a certain parameter of space, a certain parameter of technology and materiality that we can work with. And so, yeah, I looked at some of your new textiles, but then I was looking at the playing cards, and then I remember like neons that you did, and sneakers, and I'm sure that you're doing like multifaceted explorations on all levels, but then also it's really exciting to know that you also are kind of interested in like, oh, what if I was to explore this medium of photography in my work? I would love to know what that would be.
I almost need like a year off to go and do photography.
Totally. Yeah.
There's all these portrait series that I would like to do. There's photography with hair, kind of like landscaping and drawing with hair, and I've done some of that. But, I almost would like someone to say, hey, once a year, Shantell, we'll support a show for you to do something that's completely different. And if that was the case, I have a whole archive of things like that I want to do. This whole box where you would walk in and have no idea it's me. But it's something I've been curious about for many years.
How would you do that given that you're so busy? Because I imagine if I was to pull up your calendar right now, there would be quite a few things on there. There wouldn't be like, oh, here's 2 weeks where Shantell can just go and explore.
Well, that's the challenge. And it's not even like I would need 2 weeks. It's more like 6 months.
For sure. But even to find anything, I don't even think there would be that small chunk.
That's the challenge. Yeah. And that's why it hasn't happened. But I think for a lot of us, it is about carving that time out. So, ahead of time being like, okay, 2026 from this month to this month, I'm going to say no to everything, even if it checks all of my lists, and I'm going to focus on this project. That's what needs to happen. But it's hard when you work on a lot of things that you like to work on and everything feels like it's a good fit. But I would even just like to go back through history of my career and maybe on my website or a new website, talk about all of the work that isn't drawing or all of the work that is more experiments in code and photography, because already there's a lot of that. I've just never really showcased it or done anything with it.
Totally. I know we're running out of time, but I do want to ask you one more question, which is about living artists and why it's important to you that we talk to living artists while they're alive and that they say in their own words what their work means.
I've definitely been to shows, museum shows where there's a curator talking about a work and they say, this work was painted in 1857. And, I would believe them because you would think that they would have that knowledge. But then I go through my own archive and I'm like, did I draw this in 2003 or was it 2005? And I have no idea. And I think when the artist is gone, a lot of the narrative, the stories, the meanings, the reasons is made up, because you really can't distill and understand about an artist's intentions and whys if it's not coming from them specifically. And that's why I started, the show that you mentioned earlier, Provenance, where I go into my own archive and talk about work, or why I have What's the Point? And I'd love to have you on as a guest in the future to talk about your work. But, I think there's something really important about oral diaries of artists in present day to understand from them directly their intentions, their philosophies, their reasons, their challenges, their hurdles, their meanings, their process from them directly.
Totally. And I think there's like sometimes there's this idea that artists can't be the experts of their own work because they're just like mysteriously doing whatever they're doing and someone else has to analyze and contextualize. Yeah. But I think that's totally absurd. And I think that our work requires us acknowledging our own agency and what it means in the world. And it's very needed, it's not like it's existing solely in terms of pleasure. It exists to give meaning and to give voice and to keep people alive in their own spirit. One thing that I really appreciate is your constant reminder for people, or your sort of provocation for them to like be them, like you are you, like stand rooted in who that is. It's like sounds simple, but it's really not. And
and that goes back to that checklist. Am I good at speaking about my own work? No. Okay, maybe that's something I can focus a little bit on, because we have this impression like, oh, they're an artist, like, they shouldn't be able to talk about their work. Why not? They're going to know more about their own work than anyone. So, let them in their own way. It doesn't have to be in a way that's taught and like very academic, but let them in their own way and in their own style, talk about their own work or get better at talking about their own work, because that's like the purest, most honest understanding of their body of work that we'll ever have.
Totally. Yeah. And thank you so much. I could talk forever to Shantell.
We could listen to you both forever. This was terrific. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia.
I think it was really great to have Sophia, an artist, interview Shantell, an artist, because the connection was clearly there and the understanding, and that was really wonderful. And Shantell, I loved how you talked about the difference between museum work and a brand activation as just different stages for your artwork. It's a really wonderful perspective that keeps the art pure regardless of who the patron might be at any particular moment. So I thought that was really wonderful. And thank you for being so transparent. And you're taking a holistic view of what it means to be an artist today by understanding the business is so important, because you talked about that direct connection between the creator and the consumer. And that's never been more possible, I think, than it is today. So that really behooves you as a creator to understand all of these pieces so that you can take control of your own destiny in that direct connection with the consumer. So I thought that was wonderful.
Well, thank you
for, yeah. And Jeff, thank you for reminding that point, because that was so powerful that Shantell said that. And I feel like we just need to just scream that into the universe, because at the end of the day, why are we making work, right? We're making work to communicate. We're making work to connect. And so any barrier to that is a problem. And anything that frees us from that barrier is something we should be open to. So
great. Terrific.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much for joining us today. I'm gonna turn it back to Anastasia to introduce our next speaker, but that was really wonderful. So I really appreciate it. Anastasia, that was great, wasn't it?
It was incredible, and I love the idea of collaboration over competition. Let's just all keep that in mind when we do the rest of this conference, because it's true what Shantell said. It's important to give the keys away, as she put it, and invite people in. So we have the privilege here of having various speakers inviting us into the creative world.
And I think, sorry, go ahead. I was just gonna say the underlying theme of supporting artists is so important. Just a quick aside, because we have a minute. I bought a painting from one of our ambassador artists, Mark Noble, and I took it to a framing shop recently to be framed. And this particular framing shop says, "Oh, I'm giving you a 20% discount because it's an original work." And their policy is they will give a 20% discount to anyone who's framing original art, because they want to encourage people to buy and support artists through original art. So I thought that was a really interesting little tidbit this framing shop could do to support creators. I thought that was really interesting.
That's incredibly reassuring, because it's true in the world full of IKEA posters that are the same in so many apartments around the world. It's kind of showing respect to real contemporary artists and shortening that link between the artist and the consumer, as Shantell mentioned.
Great. Speaking of artists, what have we got coming up next?
Yes. Next up is Nate Bear. He is an illustrator and character designer based in New York City, and his work is known for blending retro cartoon aesthetics with dynamic color schemes. He has worked with clients such as DreamWorks, Time Out, and Purpose, and he regularly publishes his own comics under the name Bear Brain label. Welcome, Nate. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's make sure that we see your screen and everything is set up. Yep, you have the stage.
All right, thanks, Anastasia. That's awesome. My daughter's name is Anastasia, so I was like, wait, am I saying this right? So hi, everybody. I'm Nate Bear, and I'm going to be telling you guys why I draw every day, which is a big question and a small question at the same time. Let me get into the presentation. So, who am I? I'm Nate Bear. Anastasia gave a little intro, but I think you got my old bio. I don't do the comics anymore, or not as much. But who am I? Nate Bear, aka Bear Brains. That's a screen name, I guess. Is a multidisciplinary artist, illustrator, animator, and creative director, working to make the world a more fun place to live through engaging designs and experiences that make your inner child fly into the air and say, wee. And also, it's not a great photo of me, but whatever. So next part of drawing every day is, what do I draw every day? You might be able to guess. It's bears. This is a character I call Noodle Bear. It's because he's got my initials, Nate Bear, Noodle Bear. Yeah, and since my real name is actually Bear, I kind of did a branding exercise and was like, okay, what would my mascot be? And this is the bear that came out of me when I decided to draw bears. This big bulging eye, bug-eyed thing. And he comes in a bunch of different forms. Sometimes he's creepy, sometimes he's cuter, sometimes he's more friendly, sometimes he's a ghost or a monster, but they're all kind of sort of related to this one base character that's evolved over the last 15 years I've been drawing him. Or probably longer than that, actually, but about 15 years. So when do I draw these bears? It's the title of the presentation. Every day. I actually drew a different calendar and was like, I like this stock guy a little better, a little placeholder. So the rules of my current project are I draw one bear every day, post it to X, aka Twitter, and then try to get it out to other platforms as well, depending how much bandwidth I have that day. And how do I draw every day? Whatever way I feel like, as long as there's a bear. And why do I draw every day? That's what I'm getting at here. And before I really answer that question, I'm just gonna kind of take you on a journey of the first time I did an everyday drawing project. So back in 2022, I did this project called 365 GM. And at the time, I was like very big into the NFT art scene, crypto art. And kind of part of the ritual of that whole scene when Twitter was Twitter was, the first post of the day, you just post on Twitter, write the letters GM for good morning, and a bunch of people reply back to you with the GM. So I thought, like, why not just up the ante a little bit and draw the letters GM in all these different ways. So these are the 365-ish. I think there's more or less in this collage. I don't think I got everything, but then there are also duplicates, so we'll say it's 365. Yeah, I did all these drawings and or animations over that year. And sorry, I lost my track. Yeah, so every day was just kind of...
It's Nate Bear.
No, what? Sorry, my iPad's talking to me. Anyway, so I would draw one of these every single day. And this is the first one. I when I was embarking on the project, I got nervous and was like, do I really want to commit to this? So I drew this thing on my phone and posted it like right before midnight, and then declared that I was going to try and do it for the rest of the year. And as I went, I kind of, I numbered them in a series, but I was kind of just drawing whatever randomly, whatever came to my mind that morning and trying to get it out. Some of them were like doing acronyms. So right in the middle, we got a jittery Mickey, we got a grimace mountain, a giggling marlin, things like that. But I didn't always do an acronym. I was kind of just like feeling things out at the start. And then eventually, like, I would do like week-long series where I was experimenting with a single style. So here I have like sort of like this airbrush style and having these weird flower monsters inside there. But, just kind of give myself the freedom to explore, but also engage with the community at the same time. And, sometimes I would also kind of tell a story over a few different days. So here I am, I guess, fighting with the morning, or maybe struggling with the project visually. So here I guess that's me. This character is fighting with the GM. And here's another two-part sequence where one, we got laser eyes coming out of a cat, and then in the second day, you see that he's actually shooting the letters GM into the moon. And then towards the end of the year, I was just really loving what I was making. Like, I had gotten really loose. I guess built up some speed in my drawing, more so than before. I'd always consider myself kind of a fast artist. But this is just kind of a snapshot of 6 days in December, November that year. Yeah, and I just kind of sort of like loved how wild it was getting, or how much permission I was giving myself to do these things. And some days I was like not so happy with it, but I feel like the hit rate was getting higher as I went in terms of what I was satisfied with making. But by the end of the year, this is the last drawing of the year. I was feeling burnt out. I was doing a lot of other projects on top of this. This was like not the only thing I was doing. This is supposed to be a quick thing, and I kind of would overextend myself. And I was like, that half hour every morning that I'm drawing this, on top of a day job and everything else, on top of being a parent, could I be better spending this time? So I at the end of the year, I decided to just kind of take a break from that, see if I could devote that energy to other things. And I think that worked out to a degree, where I had a lot of success that year in 2023. Did some projects that I was proud of, worked with some brands I was really proud of. But then towards the beginning of this year, I kind of felt like I was losing a little momentum. I can't really put my finger on it, or maybe I just really missed the idea of the daily drawing thing, or having that sort of being known for something. I feel like that whole year when I was doing the GMs, I felt like everybody would be like, "Oh yeah, Nate, he's the GM guy." It was kind of just like something I was known for, some sort of branding exercise there that I thought had kind of disappeared. So, and I was thinking about other artists that had done sort of these ongoing projects. One really famous example is the artist Beeple on the left. He's been doing a daily 3D render or drawing for I don't know, at least a decade, probably about 15 years. But at one point in 2021, he sold the first 5,000 drawings as a single piece, and it was like a record-setting NFT sale as digital art, but it was also one of the biggest art sales in history in general, especially for a living contemporary artist. Not that that's what I'm going for, but just thinking about the fact that there's a buildup over time of all your work together can accumulate into something bigger, and sort of be rewarded for that long time effort. And then my friend Kyle also started this daily doodle project. He was saying, I'm gonna doodle every day until I hit 10K followers, which is sort of like a goof on the idea of like people trying to build a social media following instead of following the heart as far as art, like thinking about that side of things. But at the same time, I also thought it was like, actually that's really smart in terms of social media, just to put that out there every day and like make that your thing. And I was kind of already thinking along those lines when he started his, so I think he's probably like 20 days ahead. It's like somewhere in there I was like, I'm gonna do mine too. So I decided to do today's bear. And similar to the GM, the rules were I can draw whatever I want as long as there's a bear in there. And I'm just gonna post it before midnight, and we'll just see see where that takes me. So let's see. Oh yeah, here's the ground rules of it. One piece every day, posted by midnight. Any subject matter as long as there's a noodle bear. How, any medium as long as there's a noodle bear. And where, I post it on X, and then that's sort of like the bare minimum. And then if I have more energy or it's not too late, I'll try posting to other platforms as well, or I just save that for the next day. And then who, me, I'm the artist. I just want to put all the questions on here. And then the why, we're getting there. I told you some of it, but we're gonna get through all that. So this current project that I started about 159-ish days ago, the same thing with the 365 GM. It's sort of random. I'm drawing a bear. I'm just doing what I feel like feels good at the time, but I feel like the quality was kind of up and down, or like the pink one right there. I don't know. I didn't feel great about that one, but then the third one I was like, oh, that one's great. People like that. So kept going, and then eventually came upon sort of we'll say my first series theme in there, which I like to call shaped blobs. And it's not not a new technique or anything like that, but I thought it was a fun exercise of kind of drawing these random blob shapes and then trying to turn all of them into little bears. Just that little challenge. And that actually sort of started to resonate a little bit more than the other stuff. Here's a few more examples of just, I tried to get really wild with the shapes and like, there's no way I could turn that weird rectangle into a bear, and, you know, just challenge myself to do things. And, you know, some of it was, you know, not all bears, because that would be boring too. You know, there's one with like fish and pelicans and stuff in there. And then I was like, well, it's still part of the project because there's a little bear in there. And then I would start posting the blank blobs in the morning as much as I could, and challenging my community. You know, it seems weird to say my community, but you know, people who engage with me online who might want to doodle to draw on the shapes. And there's this one artist named Zog Puke who's a champ and probably did it about 10 times, where he drew over my blob shape, and you know, I feel like that could be a fun little group show somewhere down the line. I never made anything happen with that, but I just thought that was a fun way to engage, you know, and make it more engaging for everybody. And I'm just surprised people did it. And then after a month or so of doing that, I had an idea to up the ante a little bit and not just draw a random shape, but make every single shape a frame in an animation. So I think this was July, so that's 31 days. So all of July was like different frames of animation, and I would put out the blob, and you know, I figured out the blob in the beginning and did the animation. So here's what that looked like. We'll just go. I'll show you more of the process next one. So that's where I ended up. I just like the idea of just kind of going crazy on every single frame of the animation, putting like more detail than would ever be needed to convey anything. But I don't know, I thought it just looked wild. I like that. And then the following month I did a similar thing, but you know, instead of like a random blob, I made it into a bear head shape, one of my doodle bears. So it's bears within bears. There's just a couple of the drawings just to show you the detail level and the randomness that was going in there, because I'm really going free association when you're making this much drawing. And here's the initial sketch, just figuring out the animation, figuring out how to break it up into 31 frames for August. Then filling in the blobs, and then the final animation, which there it is. And I think it's successful and not successful in different ways, but I don't know. I love that piece. And I kind of like the idea that it's like multiple pieces and one piece at the same time. All right, then for September, I decided to really break my own back, challenge myself, do something that's not my wheelhouse, expand my horizons, do some 3D sculptures all month. Here's a bunch. Here's most of them all at once. I did this app on my iPad that does, you know, that's good for 3D sculpting. I'm not an expert in that, but I figure I just see what I could do, because I've played with it here and there, but never really was like, hey, let's do a whole body work in 3D. Not that I call this body work, but you know. So here's a couple examples. The first one I did was this bear head, keep it simple. Then I would get complicated, started learning stuff about the lighting, made this robot guy. Playing with materials is really fun in 3D, because you don't have to shade anything. The things are shaded. You tell it's metal, it's metal. Here's a pencil guy. I just like the little shiny stamp on there. Here's a burger. And I'm kind of surprised that I was able to churn these out within a day, each one of them, you know, within a couple hours. But it just became a different kind of way of working. It got a little bit more natural as it went on. And then I also kind of built into the system little cheat days here, where I had this blank, the same sculpture, but I would just take that 3D model, put it into Procreate, and draw a different pattern on it on the days when I didn't have much time. It was, oh, it's 11 p.m. I haven't done anything yet. Let me squeeze this out. So here's a blank. That's what the bear looks like without the drawing on it. And it's that simple. You can just draw right in Procreate. Happy International Artist Day, everybody. And then currently we're in spooky season. So I've just been drawing these black and white pencil-ish, it's still digital, but they look like pencil sketches of different spooky themed things. I have a variation on Noodle Bear that I call Boo Bear because he's a ghost. He's got a little bit different design. He's got like a ghost shape and no arms. I don't think I guess the top left is sort of the best example of what he looks like on the base. And then for this, I did this sort of animation in 3D space that ties them all together. And yeah, that was an extra level challenge. And then my cheat days on that, or I post the 2D drawing and I'll figure out how to get it into this collage later. But that was something I'd also done with the GMs was this 3D collage art, also on my iPad. But I don't know, I thought it was a fun way to showcase it. And then every single day the loop gets a little bit longer and there's a little bit more bear in there. All right, now let's bring, so as I'm getting to the why I do it, I think I'm gonna, for all the other artists out there or creators out there, wherever you may be doing, this is why I think you should draw every day, or almost every day, or make a schedule and stick to it. It's basically my idea. So here's reason number one. I'm gonna date myself with these, but here's two characters. Can you guess what they have in common? They're both missing something, but they got it back. It's how Stella got her groove back, and it's Austin Powers getting his mojo back. So we got the groove and the mojo. When you draw, what I feel like when you put yourself on a schedule, it kind of does, one thing, you're just holding yourself to it and jump starting yourself to be motivated. So there's this one quote from Stephen King where he says, if you write a page every day, only 300 words, in a year you'll have written a novel. And you can sort of apply that sort of logic to everything. Like you do a little bit of something every day and you'll build up a body of work, or you'll just stack up yeah, we'll just say body of work. All right, so to get started, I suggest setting your own ground rules. How often are you going to share your art? And I think sharing is important to keep yourself accountable, but you don't have to. It could be a blog, it could be on Instagram, it could be any other social network. It could be in your backyard, nailed to a tree. What is it? Define your subject matter. What are you going to draw every day or every week? Or I like every day because it's simple, but but it could be any period of time. What medium are you doing? You can set that. I kind of set it as wide open, but maybe you're a yarn crafter and that's your medium that you're gonna stick with forever. Where you're gonna be sharing it primarily, like I said, it could be on Instagram, it could be on your blog, whatever. And who? Is it you? Is it a collaboration? I don't know. But I think it's easier when it's just you. And then the why, I kind of gave my whys, but I think wherever motivates you, like whether you think it's a way to build a following, whether it's to get practice, whether it's to just see what you can do. I think there's a lot of reasons to kind of put yourself on a making schedule. And then here's some just general tips. One, you make the rules. It could be, like I said, it could be once a day, it could be once a month, it could be every 3 days, it could be every third Tuesday, whatever it is. Keep it manageable. Just think about, because you could make it so challenging that you can't fit into your schedule, or you could just make it simple, like, okay, it's wherever I can do in 15 minutes, or wherever I can do in under an hour, wherever that time that you feel like you have. Define what is the MVP, what is the least thing that you can do, and make sure you're leaving time for other projects, because hopefully this, if you're ambitious, getting yourself out there will put you in front of people that might want to do collaborations with you. Focus on learning, not just likes and audience. I feel like that's been helpful for me, where I'm really not focused on that side. I'm just kind of like, okay, I want to learn 3D art. I want to see what happens when I do this animation over a course of a month. Focus on your why, like what's motivating to do this, and then stay flexible. Like there have been days where I have been absolutely dead tired and I did not did not get my thing out, and I was just like, I'll do 2 bears tomorrow. But that only happened once so far. But or maybe something like that, or maybe I'll post a little bit after midnight. I don't know what it is. And there, now he goes. And that's it. Thank you, everybody. Hope you guys start making lots of stuff.
Jeff, you're on mute. But I just wanted to say thank you for this incredible example of consistency. There's a whole conversation going on in the comment section about creative consistency and how we have this motivation in school or in art school or in whatever it's given to us, and then we have to find it ourselves as artists, as creatives. And it's nice to have sort of healthy examples, because when it comes to writers, for example, it's something I know better than painters. There are all these brilliant dramatic writers like Hemingway, who was known for writing in bars and all that. But then you have, I don't know, Haruki Murakami, for example, who says that he gets up every single morning at 5 a.m. and he writes for 3 hours, and then he lives the rest of his life. But that consistency is humbling and also brave, because you have to sort of every day face the fact that you're there and you're going to be there for 3 or whatever hours, no matter what happens. So thank you for this.
Yeah, it was great, Nate, that you shared the bare necessities on how to get your groove and your mojo back. But seeing how the sausage was made, I really enjoyed showing, you went from bears to blobs and back to bears, but showing that the blob first and then turning it into the bear, and the step-by-step for the animations, and giving yourself those monthly challenges was really interesting, and it makes me sort of jealous to not necessarily have the discipline to really do that on a daily basis. But as you pointed out, you could see what the end result is when you have that consistency in your practice. So really, thank you for sharing all of that.
No problem. Thank you.
Great.
Appreciate that.
So Anastasia, what's up next in our International Artist Day conference? This has been really great so far.
We've got still a few brilliant speakers left. Next up is Rob Anderson. Rob is a visual artist from Queens, New York, known for his bold community-driven murals. His interactive citizen murals have been showcased in cities across the US and internationally. Rob has completed major public projects, including a 2,000 square foot mural for Rigo Center in New York City, and has collaborated with institutions like the Lego Factory and the Museum of Fine Arts in Hungary. Welcome, Rob. Thank you for joining us. I could see you peeking into Nate's drawings in the presentation behind the scenes. It's so nice to see artists interested in other artists' work.
I was laughing out loud because I think he has such a whimsical flow, and I really liked his natural presentation and just his authenticity there. And the drawings were incredible. I was looking at all the details, so it was really interesting work.
Yeah. Well, you have the stage, and feel free to tell us if you draw every day or not, because now that's fascinating.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
So behind the scenes, we have a tech wizard. It might sound like my slide presentation is voice activated, but
it's coming.
My buddy Rost back there, the Wizard of Rost. When you hear me say next and stuff, he's gonna go through the slides because of this is our tech adaptation. So Ross, why don't we go into the top left corner? I'll introduce myself. My name's Rob Anderson. I'm 35 years old. I was born and raised in Queens, New York City. I would describe myself as a community artist, educator, muralist, and similar to the previous rock star artists, I have roots in drawing every day and exploring style and theme and connections to the world around me. So let's go to the next slide. At some point, this coloring page will be made available to our viewers, and this is a piece that was actually designed for Lego Hungary for space-themed art activation, where we actually created this design as a 35,000 piece Lego mosaic and had over 500 people building the individual grid components of it. So that'll be available to you guys later. And thank you, .art, for having me. I didn't even know there was an artist day, so I feel particularly supported today. So let's see the next slide. So let's begin this. I just got back from a 3-month stay in Budapest, Hungary. About a year ago, I made the decision to sell all my belongings and make a move over there after a couple of extremely inspirational situations and reconnecting to my roots and family. I just absolutely fell in love with Budapest. So a year after those experiences, I made some connections to have my first ever international solo art show, where I featured artwork based on music, impossible instruments, and a sort of pop renaissance-y players playing their impossible instruments. So let's see the next slide. During that stay, I also did an interactive paint by numbers canvas with the paint brand Molotov during an outdoor street art exhibit. And so I think you'll see a common thread is a lot of my pieces focus around the idea of engagement and bringing people into the process of my work by offering everybody a space on the canvas to collaborate together. Let's see the next guy. Okay, and this is a little snapshot of the Lego mosaic as it's under construction. And so that was sort of the most awesome part of this trip. And let's see the next slide, and I'll get into. So I'm back in New York City. One of the reasons I came back was to work on some art projects. And as it so happens, being an artist, sometimes these projects fall through. And unfortunately, in this case, one of them did. And so the cool part is, like, the next day I found out that this Artist Day conference was happening. And this idea of let's just keep going with the flow. This is a really cool opportunity. I was brainstorming how I would prepare for this presentation. One of those ways was getting some water, because now my throat's dry. Excuse me. So I was trying to find a nice, calm, quiet, undisturbed place to write about my life and what I would present here. So we'll go to the next slide. And I decided that I would go to the cemetery next door. I thought this would be a cool place to contemplate life and my journey so far and what kind of messages I can bring to you guys. So there I am, figuring that I'm going to write about my stuff now. And I really like this photo because, you know, you're sort of in the city of the living, New York City, and the city of the dead, and being in this in-between space of thinking about the big questions in life. So we can go to the next slide. Now, something really crazy happened because as I'm walking through the cemetery, I came across a headstone that had my last name on it. And so what the dang, like, all right, I don't really believe in superstitions, but this was an extremely causal circumstance. I asked for this. And when I rounded the headstone on the next slide, not only was it Anderson, but inscribed on the face was like my name all over it. So I'm like, oh man, this is actually super good, right? I'm gonna have a great presentation now because this circumstance led me to start thinking about some big questions. And one of them was something I think all artists face is what would I be known for? So I looked at this moment as an opportunity to look at my life as though it were at the end, and maybe that there would be some great big idea or connection from the life that I've lived so far that would make a difference in other artists' journeys and my own, because I'm still here, thankfully. And so from the following photos, what I hope is that it shows that a commitment to creativity, engagement, and desire to make a positive mark on the world is a really beautiful way to honor the opportunity to be alive. So let's check out the next slide. What have I got? Okay, so I can start from an early age. I was always drawing comics, and this is like a great summation of the kind of student I was throughout elementary and junior high school. This is a faithful recreation of a 3-panel stick figure comic that I made when I was in junior high school. And I think so early on, I was super inspired by like Calvin and Hobbes comics and superheroes and video games and stuff. And I always saw like the opportunities from when I was bored to make creations, and sometimes the creations were about my boredom, like in this piece. And I used art and comics as a way to give gifts to people, make friends, make my teachers laugh. And so I really liked this connectivity that my drawings made among people. So we're going to fast forward a whole bunch to a big moment where, like previous artists, I decided to keep a sketchbook every day. So let's see the next slide. And I think you can like slowly flip through these until you get to the Post-it note picture. So around the late 2000s, I noticed that a lot of people were using smartphones and kind of like popping bubbles their time away. And I kind of used that as a fuel to convince myself that if I'm going to have extra time, like on my commutes or waiting around, that rather than using this like technological marvel for connection to do these kind of silly things, which, you know, I'm guilty of also. It can be fun. I would be on the train and sketch every day. So I really wanted to commit to improving skills. And I thought that the challenge of being on a moving train really helped up my ability to draw consistently. And in the uncomfortable environment of the New York City subway, I think it was like a trial by fire to get really good at drawing smooth lines. And so some of these you'll see are characters and experimenting with different lines and widths. And I really had a lot of fun working on these pieces and made the time go by very well, very nicely. And so let's skip ahead to, so these are some of the subway doodle sketches. So right here. So also in the like around 2011, 2012, I was working as a salesperson at a Vince Camuto shoe store in Soho. And I would hide a sketchbook in my pocket or Post-it notes and always be working on doodles when nobody was looking. And one thing I started to do was when customers would come purchase shoes from me, I'd leave them little thank you notes in the form of these doodles. Let's see the next one. They start to evolve and turned into like pop-up cards. You can see the next one. I thought like this was like adding value and a new relationship with my customers, where if they love the art so much, they'd want to come back and spend time with me and maybe shop more. And it worked really well. Next slide. So also my shoe store was discarding shoe boxes, and I would cut out the panels and draw on them and paint on them. And I would give these away to my clients as well. After work, you can keep going through some slides. After work, I would bring these drawings and I'd display them in the subway, and I'd be painting in the subway terminals and stations and stuff. So it was a cool place to like recycle something that was being discarded and try to make something beautiful out of it. So these are from like shoe cases, the big boxes that our shoes would come in. And then I started to like establish different styles and techniques, and it was a really cool place to experiment and grow from. So we could stop here for a moment. I would also, after work, go to a lot of live art shows and art battles and paint along to DJs and musicians and people dancing. So I also really love the idea of art as a live performance. And I also come from a musical background. I play bass in jazz bands, classical bands and a heavy metal band for about 6 years. And there was a day where I got really bold and excited, and I printed out some UPS labels from work with my art on it, and I started posting it around the city. And not long after, the first sticker I ever put up in my life, as the professional vandal I wasn't, I was in handcuffs and spent 24 hours in jail for a sticker on a mailbox. And that was a terrible but eye-opening experience, because the following day I got a call from a friend of mine who had a store event in Soho, and they were looking for an artist to paint on their hoodies, and it was a paid opportunity, and I was getting product. And so it was really like this beautiful nod from the universe of like, you're really a terrible vandal, but here's an opportunity. I'm going to throw you an olive branch, and maybe if you get permission to do what you love, you'll start looking at the world a little differently. So let's see the next guy. So my experience in the shoe store turned into people loving the drawings so much that they would ask for the drawings on their product. So I was making some money selling shoes and then having them returned for money to be made by painting art on them. So I thought like art is a super cool way to inspire people and repurpose things yet again, and now they could wear them. So let's see some other images. Let's go through. Making custom shoes, drawings on them, and it's really challenging, similar to riding on the subway, to draw over a 3D form. Yeah, so let's keep going. But I really like, so let's stop here for a moment. One of the shoe painting events that now my store was working with me on painting shoes and fundraisers. And one of those opportunities led to a connection with a fundraiser where the organizers asked if I could donate a mural or some sort of art making workshop as one of the auction items. So let's see the next slide. And so I found my way working first as a volunteer with the Kingsbridge Heights Community Center. And we produced collaborative canvases with the students there and a mural for their garden space. And this was another awesome eye-opening experience, because I saw that art had the ability to inspire people at an early age and get them motivated to create together and see the beauty and collaboration. Let's see the next guy. And that led to some more serious mural work. So I had made a free window painting for a friend's store opening in Fresh Meadows. And the building owner walked by and gave me a call, and he said, "Man, I love what you did on the window. How much would it cost to get this all over our neighborhood?" And I remember negotiating that from the stockroom of my shoe store. And the number I gave, he said yes to immediately. And I was like, oh, dang, I didn't ask for enough. You always want to make somebody a little bit uncomfortable to say yes to your price, I think. So this was a significant series of murals. There's actually 6 in Fresh Meadows that I worked on. And in this time, something amazing happened yet again. As I was painting, some families started approaching and asking if their kids could paint with me, because I think the style lends itself a lot to having like this big coloring book aesthetic on a large scale. And so I listened to that right away, and I was like, yes, this is it. Like, being a muralist where people are so excited by the work you're doing that they want to contribute and get involved was like such a nod from the universe. So I had this idea now that whenever I'd create murals, they'd be centered and focused around workshop experiences with others, and creating a sense of a unity and bonding between people and their neighborhoods. So let's see the next guy. That led to even bigger projects. So this is the Regal Park mural, as mentioned before. Even though there was scaffolding all over this, the bottom sections were also used as community engagement spaces. And so a lot of these shapes were created by locals. You can go see it on Queens Boulevard and 63rd Drive on the northwest corner. There's an escalator atrium behind some glass there. Let's see the next guy. Meanwhile, I also started working more with schools. And so here's a great little student of mine who he got in trouble for writing some not so savory things about his principal in the bathroom stalls. And rather that the punishment was that during his lunch hour, he had to come visit me while I was working on a big school mural. I had gotten a grant through the New York Foundation of Arts to create a big mural for their wall. And so on his lunchtime, he would come, and we talked a lot about how art and this like form of expression could be rechanneled into doing something really beautiful and wonderful for others. And I think it really had a profound impact on him. Let's see the next guy. What do we have next? Here's a wonderful group of students that came to visit me to paint every day. I also taught in their class, and I remember one of these students in particular. He was an extremely creative kid, and he made amazing drawings. But he would always look at them extremely cynical and like, I can't draw, I can't do this. This is what I wanted to make. And I remember one time I was really encouraging him and telling him how wonderful his work made me feel, and that he had a brilliant creative mind, and like I was in the same place as him when I was younger. And the next day, and it really brought a tear to my eye, like he said, you know, Mr. Rob, nobody ever said I had a creative mind. And that was like another sign from the universe that this level of encouragement that we can give to others can really be a pivotal moment where people are become more self-aware of their gifting. And I think it's also up to us as like older generation for younger folks to instill this form of value in their existence. Let's see the next slide. So this is the mural that all the students and teachers worked on this, and you know, during class hours, classes would come out. After school, parents would come with their students, and we had rows of paint buckets lined up. This is on Roosevelt Avenue in Corona for PS 19. Let's see the next one. So from the murals, I also discovered that I can create canvas rolls, stretched or just rolled up, and bring my designs anywhere to work with any kind of wall space and treat every canvas as an opportunity to create with others. Let's see the next guy. Also, going along with the power of encouragement, these are students that are setting up their own art show from the work that they created. Let's see the next slide. So they're really happy to do it. And then they, with a little direction, they set this whole thing up. And they're like second, third, and fourth graders. So I think, you know, sometimes they say being a teacher is a thankless job, but when you like really see how well your students have worked on something, they don't even have to say anything. It just shows that you've done something really wonderful for them. Let's see the next slide. This is a collaborative mural I did in Brooklyn during during COVID and the George Floyd protests. And my message has always been creating a sense of unity and balance among people. So I painted this with members of the community on a plywood wall. It was called the Wall of Justice, and there were a lot of murals and protest and trying to create unity around the difficult time we were going through. Let's see the next guy. It's no longer there, unfortunately. So just the paintings kept on coming, and this is a piece that we did for Kingsbridge Heights earlier this year. And the two massive paintings that we made together were auctioned off. And so the kids were also involved in the fundraising aspect and got to see their paintings proudly auctioned off. Let's see the next guy. Here's another school mural that I did in Coney Island. Again, all the students painted this together, and we developed a nice, a friendly relationship where The students told me about what they love to do. So everything from dance to basketball to reading out loud or being late to class. It's all kind of represented there. Let's see the next one. So this rediscovering Hungary was extremely inspiring to me to see like the difference in aesthetic growing up in New York City and just like the beauty of the space. So my work took on a little bit more of like a pop renaissance-y folk aesthetic, and I started incorporating more knights and people clad in armor. And so what I decided to create was like a man and woman figure embracing each other, but also a third entity in the middle, which is this idea that like we're creating life together. And what was super serendipitous about this piece is around the time I was finishing it up, I went on a hike with some friends up to area called Philosopher's Hill in Budapest. And on the next slide, I encountered this sculpture, which was exactly the painting I was working on at home. And so this is a king and I guess queen that are uniting over this rift in the center. And so again, through this experience, I was like, man, I think, you know, thank God I've been like listening to what the universe has been trying to tell me. Let's see the next slide. My work continued as an engagement tool with corporations, schools, museums, institutions. These are 4 of like the dozen so interactive painting events that we worked on in Rego Park. And all of these were colored in by hundreds of different kids. You can see them on display on the 3rd floor. And just going back to the beginning, so like using art as this opportunity to transform spaces, to transform the younger generation, to encourage students to recognize their gifting, I think is, you know, an artist plays this incredible role in people's lives, especially if you're listening to the signs and watching the opportunities to get involved and get engaged. And there's just one more slide, and then that's what I got. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Rob. This was beautiful. And I have to say, I love the way you see the world. I mean, between the story in the cemetery and you seeing a sign and that you're going to have a great presentation and you going to jail and figuring out you're not a very good vandal. I love it. And also, I got to say, somebody is following in your footsteps or stepping into your shoes in terms of giving out cards in a shop, because I was recently shopping for shoes in Paris. And I started chatting to the shop assistant, and it turned out that he's actually studying to be a fashion designer. So as he sold me my pair of shoes, he added a little card with a doodle, like a very fashiony, stylish doodle. So I think it's a great idea to make connections, just putting your art out there in whatever way you can and making human connections.
And the engagement with the community is great. And full disclosure, we discovered in the green room before the show that Rob and I actually went to the same high school. Of course, right. Rob graduated many years before me, but
yeah,
we went to the same
desk, and I saw your doodles all over it.
But I know all of the areas in Queens that Rob mentioned. I'm very familiar with them. So I can't wait for the next time I go to my hometown, and I will be searching for your works and seeing them. So that was great. Thank you.
Let me know when you're there. I'll give you a tour for sure.
That would be awesome. Great. So Anastasia, thank you, Rob. Anastasia, let's get back into the program. Who have we got up next in our International Artist Day Conference?
Next up is Anna Shvets, who is going to bring us a different angle, because Anna is an art business strategist, producer, and educator. Anna is joining us from Ecuador, so we're really versatile in terms of geography here. She is the CEO of Tatchers Art Management and the COO of Fuel Arts. As a visionary integrating art, science, and technology, Anna's work spans global initiatives that connect the arts with environmental and cultural discussions. Anna, it's very good to see you again. Anna is also the art ambassador in Ecuador, so we got many all over the world. How are you?
Yeah, hi guys. I just need one moment to share the. Okay, I will put it here.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, it was very interesting, absolutely amazing conversation of Shantell and Sophia. I think it's very important to not to think about artist profession just like something very like something like Disneyland every day. You need really to work hard every day, and the consistency of Nate and the very optimistic position of Rob, I really enjoyed.
We've got
Yes.
plenty of optimism here, definitely. And we're all trying to be our own tech wizards. And as Shantell was saying, financial wizards and tax wizards.
Yeah.
Do you need any help? How's it going?
Yes, I will ask Ross to share my presentation that I sent to you. I have some problem with sharing of the file.
Yeah, in the meantime, you can just briefly introduce yourself.
Yes, I will tell you interesting story. Actually, now waiting for my turn to be online. I was writing letters, emails to those artists who were selected from almost 400 applications, and I was writing them after several weeks of this selection process, and I was revising, like, can you imagine, like 400 websites? And I can share today some insights, some recommendations for those artists who apply for some residency, some open call, and it would be really useful for those who are getting their domain name on .art. Okay, you got great domain name, but then you need to build your website. So I just give you some recommendations. And while my presentation is going to roast, I will tell something about myself. Yes, I'm not so artistic person as Nate, Rob, Shantell, and Sophia, but I'm the person who work on the backstage of the art scene, art processes. Usually, I work as a producer, so I bring concepts to reality, and I also work as an independent curator and director of different international cultural initiatives. So I know all the inner processes, all the stones behind this water to try to find those artists who are not just talented but also very organizationally prepared. So what I can share with you, yeah, here you can see some my occupation.
You mean to switch? Yeah.
Good. Yep, sure. I'm the CEO of Tatchers Arts Management, so we are working together with our team, international team, for more than, I don't know, maybe 18 years already. Yes, and I'm co-curator of AI Hakusai Art Tech research project that is starting next coming Monday, and it will be beautiful project. And I invite all the artists who are interested in the topic of artificial intelligence and creativity, artificial intelligence and art to join our project, to join public program, because we are starting art residency now, and we will publish a report, and we will do a documentary movie about intersection of art and AI, and it would be really great investigation, great observations about how they interact, what they do, what challenges, opportunities, problems, discoveries they meet during this process. I'm also founder of Art Ambassadors Association. It's a huge organization that unites art critics, curators, technological specialists in culture, writers, journalists related to art, and so on. I'm also a business mentor of IED, Instituto Europeo de Design, where I was studying art management many years ago. Fuel Wars, you already mentioned. I'm facilitator of ARTSI, Art and Social Impact Group, that is also international group of art managers and artists. I'm producer of Dos Islas Studios. As I'm here in Ecuador, we do a lot of very crazy projects in mountains and volcanoes, in underwater and so on. And Dark Paradise is one of them. Of course, I'm ambassador of our domain platform. And also Arte Laguna Prize, the Italian contemporary art competition that I think that a lot of people know because they have already maybe 20 years of history. Okay, let's go to the further side, because I think that those who are interested in some art management help can find it on your website, on my website. So speaking about online presence, okay, my last 3 weeks were dedicated to selection process. So of course we were going through applications, and we were observing, okay, many artists already have their website on .art, and that is amazing. When I see that it is not .com, something, I already understand that the artist thinks about his or her professional career, and it is very important because this distinguish this person from others. I think that it is very good step, good strategy. Of course, Instagram. I will tell you some inner information. Sometimes we are going through materials that artists send to us, and we want to go immediately to the visual part, and we go to Instagram to check out what visual part we can find there. Because in Instagram we can also find like field work, we can find like photos from studio, we can find photos of the person, of artist itself, himself, herself, and yes, it is very important. And yeah, if it is some artistic Instagram that is used for professional work, I prefer not to see there any selfies in the mirror with body, muscles, and so on. No. If you are consistent in what you're doing online, please keep your Instagram professional. Okay, it can be crazy, of course, but I want to see there some images, because sometimes some artists don't have website and they use Instagram as their representation online. Okay. Time body, or something that can be of the same function. I mean, I will tell you also like inner information. After selection process, most of the galleries, open calls, residencies, we do online interview. And it is very important to be punctual, to go to the meeting with curators time that was planned for this, because unfortunately some artists, they lost the opportunity to be in this project because of they were lost in time differences. Now we have huge international projects that are connecting people from different continents, from different time zones, and it is very important to control your time. Okay, yes, our planet is big thing, and sometimes we have guys from Asia, guys from Canada, Australia, every part of the world, but something that will show you time of meeting in your time zone will be a saving instrument for your artistic career, because you can just lose the opportunity of some open call, residency, contest, or so long. Yes, YouTube videos. If you have some TEDx conferences, webinars, something that will show you in action speaking, that is very good bonus, because for some projects we don't only need your art and your presence, we need to understand how you speak. The the concept that Shantell and Sophia were discussing, how you present yourself, how you speak about your artistic process. We need to listen to you, because when we choose artists for some opportunity, we want to see all the range of the of the skills that you represent, not only artists, but how you speak, how you write, how you present yourself. Yes, PDF portfolio, actual fonts, images, everything should be readable, everything should be clear, because sometimes we got portfolios made in Word file with very small pixelized images, with a very small font that we cannot read. So guys, this doesn't work for being selected to some good opportunity, so you lose this opportunity. LinkedIn, of course. I think that LinkedIn now is of huge use for art people from all over the world. You can find there a lot of curators, art business people, gallerists, and so on. So don't be lazy, artists. Please do your LinkedIn profile. It is not a lot of time, but you will be presented there. You can follow those curators, those producers, those art tech, art business people that you want to follow, not to lose the opportunity to be updated. Okay, next slide, please. Yes, now we will speak about your website that is on .art, as you know. From homepage, please show your art. And if you work in different media, please put their information or images of your artworks in different media. Okay, you have video art, you have, I don't know, 3D installations, you have graphics, you have, I don't know what else you have street art examples. Please, I go to your web page, and from the beginning, I want to see visually what you're doing, because first of all, we are getting impressed by aesthetics, by the technique, by the visual part of the artist, and then if I like it, I will go further to see additional information. Don't make it too tricky or overloaded. Make it clean. If you don't have a lot of time to build it like very professionally and so on, good. You have .art site builder. It is very simple. You will just make it in several hours and it will help you to be presented online. But during these 400 websites that I saw during this couple of weeks, I was like really impressed how sometimes websites can be overloaded with information, too much information, and you just want to leave this website and never return again. Make sure that you have about section with your bio. Art professionals from different countries, we want to see, where you are originally from, because it is important, where you are based, because it is also important for the topic of time zones, and give list of exhibitions and give your artistic statement, because we want to understand, with which topics you work, which problematics is interesting to you, and we want from your website, we want to understand what kind of artist you are, and what we can speak with you about, and what kind of dialogue we can do between you and maybe other artists that is participating in the project. Yeah, list of exhibitions. It is always cool to see that you were exhibited in this museum, this gallery, this country, I don't know, this initiative. And of course, please have their active links on your social networks. So one click and you there. Please, when you are doing your website, please think about the person who will go there and to check information there. It should be very comfortable to be there and very functional to use it. Okay, yeah, we can go to the next one. I'm finishing. So if you want to know more, just find me on any social network. You can find Tatchers on any social network. And if you are interested in art and AI, go to find AI Hakusai, our tech research project. We are doing now the opening of the residency, and we are going to do research during this 3 months. And we are going to open the virtual experience, virtual gallery in January. So I hope to see you there. And please contact me if you need more advices and more guidance. Yep. Thank you. And happy Artist Day.
Thank you, Anna. That was great. And we appreciate it. Really, really useful feedback for artists. I think it's nice. You know, Shantell talked about understanding some of the business aspects, paying your taxes, protecting your work, you know, archiving your work. But I think you talked about how you present yourself, not just as an artist, but as a person, because when you're applying for these opportunities, that's going to be important. They're going to look at you holistically and not just look at your artwork alone. So I think that was really great, useful advice.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Anna. I'll see you back at the roundtable. There are going to be for sure questions from the audience about presenting yourself. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
Great. So Anastasia, we have another great speaker coming up, a very talented artist.
Yes, I'm extremely excited to announce Phil Hansen. Phil is celebrated for his inspiring interactive work that challenges creative boundaries. The official artist for the 51st Grammy Awards, Phil has partnered with .art's therapy initiative, and his work often touches on innovation through limitations. And I'm personally extremely excited to hear Phil speak because his 2013 TED Talk, Embrace the Shake, has over 3 million views. And yesterday, as we were doing our tech call prior to this conference, we felt like Phil should be teaching us how to do online conferencing and not the other way around. So Phil, you have the stage. Thank you for joining.
Very nice. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. So my name is Phil. I'm going to be sharing a bit with you, like, for instance, that I'm going to be going through some art projects. I'm going to be sharing a little bit about creativity, kind of some ways and tips that you can keep yourself creative. And then I'm going to be doing a little bit of a call for art, talking about a gallery opening. I actually took my studio and turned it into a gallery, which is very exciting but nerve-wracking. So I do want to take you back in time now. We got to go 18 years ago to the early starts of YouTube, and that's when I first started posting videos. And so here we go. Let's go with this one. So actually, let's back up. Here we are. Sometimes there's too much tech involved. All right, so this video, painting pictures on my chest. So I actually took 30 images, and it took about 24 hours in total of painting. You're only seeing a clip of it here. And all of this coming together to be able to make a portrait in the end. And that video actually ended up going viral. And then at one point, it was the 99th most viewed video on all of YouTube, which they don't even keep track of that anymore. So that gives you kind of a place in time for that kind of a project where everybody was still seeing the same front page. Another time, I decided I was going to destroy my art for a year, which was kind of exciting and also nerve-wracking. So I'm going to share one project from that. So we have matches. These are matches that have been colored different colors. And this project was very much about physical destruction. Sometimes the projects were, about things that didn't really exist and were destroyed by nature. But this one I wanted to physically destroy. And it was a very, very fun little project. I definitely love fire. Any real opportunity there is for fire, I am going to take it. There's the finale of it all. And now we are going to jump forward in time to, well, kind of in the mid-range here. So a project that I get to share with you, where what I did is I actually did little tiny drawings, and then I took each drawing and I sent it to somebody and asked them to copy it. And then the person sent that copy back to me. And then I took that copy and sent them to somebody else to copy. And then they sent that back. And so what I did, and let's start out with the 5 little drawings I started with. Here, nice and clean and simple. And again, these are pretty darn small. And then I want to cut to, these are the 3rd drawings that have come back. So I did the first one, the second one. Now these are the 3rd, and you can already see a little bit of change happening in them. And what I would love for you to do is look at one of the faces and then just pick a part of the face, like an eyeball, a mouth or something, and just stare at it for a moment here, because now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit play, because this went on for 4.5 years. mailing out all of these little pictures back and forth and back and forth, and then just watching over the course of literally years as these images changed. And I thought it was such an interesting idea. And it's, I mean, it's very much the game of telephone, but for art. But it was really this idea of the visual of how things change, how we change, how people's perception of us changes as well. So that was a fun one. Now, I want to cut to something a bit more recent. So what I did with this one is I actually, and this was maybe the start of it, is I did a little tiny picture. So there was this photographer back in the 1950s, and he would photograph a model as she was in her pose, and then he would turn the table that she was on. So it was a rotating table, and he would photograph her again, and then turn and again. And so all these little pictures actually could create an animation. Obviously, he did it in a printed book. But with that idea, then what I decided I was going to do was actually draw a little piece of the model, of the artist, or of the model. So in the center there, that's one pose from the model, but drawn 3 different times, painted. And so then I took all those little paintings and stacked them on top of each other in Premiere afterwards. And so we take all of these 3 little poses, and as we put them together, of course, she starts to move, she starts to turn, and we get this animation. And I thought it was really kind of a fun way to bring somebody to life, kind of this, in this life or the next, depending on, how things are going for us, wherever we end up. And then also the fact that this is in fragments. And yet right now you can see her as a whole. And yet all of our lives, we're kind of living our lives in the moment. We're not necessarily seeing a full version of ourselves. And so that's really what this project was about, being able to think about the instances that we live in, but then also how those instances add up. And then the last artwork I'm going to share with you here is in my downtown studio space. I built so this is turning into the gallery. I needed a mural on the wall. And so I didn't have money to hire somebody, which would have been cool, but I decided to paint it myself. And so the idea here is to take all of the weird little sketches that we do, the drawings that we make, and turn them into something bigger. And I have a tremor in my hand. And because of that tremor, I couldn't get the clean lines that I wanted in the dark paint. But then I realized that those little black lines being kind of fuzzy and jittery was actually pretty cool. So I went for it and enjoyed it. So that was a fun one, extremely different from anything else that I've ever done. But I definitely wanted kind of that lowbrow look for the gallery there. All right. Now, the next one that I want to share is I want to talk a little bit about how we can keep creativity in our lives. So I'm going to kind of run through some ideas of how to stay creative, because if it hasn't happened to you yet, it will happen at some point. You're going to find less people around you doing creative things. And unfortunately, it happens. Like, we just find less of the people who used to be creative are still doing things. So I want to kind of jump into a couple elements here. And really what it's going to kind of be based around is this idea of creative production and just having creativity in our lives. And I kept thinking about when I was creatively blocked, like, why was I blocked? And I wasn't entirely sure. But as I kept thinking about it, I realized that when I was being productive, these 3 things were working together and I would never feel stuck. But when I was feeling stuck, I kept realizing one of these things was gone. And this is probably the only Venn diagram that you will ever see from an artist, but I actually think it is super useful to be able to check out. So like, you can imagine if you don't have the skills to get your idea done, you're not going to get the idea done. And so again, if you remove one of these things, you're not going to be productive. And I think motivation and ideas are obviously super important to it. But Nate Bear earlier was talking about, learning new skills, learning that 3D modeling software. Well, then that actually allows more growth. It allows more ideas, and that's motivating. That's exciting. And so being able to learn new skill sets actually then sparks motivation, which then brings ideas. So those 3 things are super, super connected. So the next part of this that I want to talk about is about how we filter our ideas, because this is something that I think comes up over and over and over. And there was even a YouTube comment about posting, like doing a drawing and then saying, oh, that's not good enough to post. And that is such a hard thing to think, because that's blocking us from creating, right? We're judging what we make in such a way that we're not even willing to share it or show anybody. And there is a time or place to be able to draw something and not share it with people. But the idea of this filter, what I want to talk about with it is that when we're kids, what we do is the idea goes into our filter and then it pops out the other end. Like, it's really just a funnel. We're not even really thinking about this. It just happens. But then what happens is maybe you have a moment of getting critiqued, right? Critique happens. And so with that critique, what's going to happen is there's going to be a little stopper that's going to plug that filter. And then maybe there's more critique. Maybe you see somebody else get critiqued. This happens a lot where, somebody else gets really bad feedback and you actually realize, well, geez, I don't want to get that feedback. And so we kind of allow ourselves to be blocked and stuck with even feedback from other people. And so what can happen is we end up in this place where our filter, the thing that allows us to bring ideas into the world, really just gets kind of stuck. It gets clogged up. And that is where I think most artist block actually comes from. Most artist block to me comes from ideas and it comes from motivation. Skills, of course, can block us, but that's at a younger point. Usually when our skills aren't developed enough and we feel stuck, that's because we're younger and we haven't learned those skills yet, or we've forgotten that we need to learn skills to be able to bring those ideas to life. And then the last thing I want to talk about with you here on the sense of an idea, a different way of being more creative and keeping creativity in your life is having what I call a creative buddy. Now, I think we all want a creative buddy in our lives, and I will give you a couple tips, but let's talk about where the creative buddy falls in kind of a spectrum here. So if we have a spectrum of curiously supportive and then how much critique this creative buddy is going to give us. Now, the creative buddy is not going to be in a place where they're giving us, just like pats on the back for everything. We don't want that, but we also don't want the troll. And so the creative buddy is kind of in this sweet spot where they're critiquing a little bit, but really it's somebody that we can go to, we can talk about our challenges with, we can be open and explore with. And so if you are wanting a creative buddy in your life, 2 tips for you. The first one is to be that person for someone else. I think having a creative buddy in our lives means to be that person, okay? And so how we can actually be thinking about being a creative buddy for others is what we got to be focusing on is we got to be thinking about, being more curious in conversations, right? You don't want to be closed-minded. You don't want to be solving people's problems. You want to just be open. You want to be listening and not judging what they have to say. And when we do that for others, that is where over time we are going to then, of course, have people be open and doing that for us. And I think that is really, really important to be able to dive into that. And when we do that, of course, then the other thing that begins to happen is that conversational aspect becomes really pretty beautiful. And so that's the first tip, being that person for somebody else. The second thing is that I think you should always tell people that you want to have a conversation that is open and creative. And so being able to jump into a conversation, text somebody before you have that conversation, like maybe a couple hours before and be like, hey, tonight after work, do you have some free time to talk about a challenge that I'm up against? I'm really struggling with this thing. Are you in a good space? Because sometimes when people get off work, they're busy, they're not in a good space for it. And so then that conversation doesn't go the way we want to. But if you tell somebody ahead of time, you can actually end up with really nice conversations with people that maybe you didn't think were going to be that open to you. So that is the other big thing that I wanted to share. So kind of 3 things with the creative elements there. Earlier, Shantell talked about carving out the time. Time is so important. Time can be a motivating factor, right? If you see a couple weeks, or if you can, make that 6-month gap on your calendar, being able to allow yourself that time, that can be really freaking exciting. And also that time can then free up that idea filter as well. There were a couple other things. Sophia talked about any barrier to making art needs to be destroyed. And I think that is so, so true. If there's ever a time where that filter that's blocking you is blocking you, like just get rid of it. Just go back, find what was fun. I think it is so important to think about the core of who we are, because these other things, sharing, liking, posting things, that's all layers on top of the core of who we are. And the core is different for all of us. For me, it's just making things. I love to make things. Maybe for other people, it's specifically they love drawing. I think we have a couple of the people that presented today that they love drawing. They have to have that in their lives. And I think that is really important. And then Nate talked about motivation. And, I think posting online and just telling people like, I'm going to do this thing for 365 days. That is motivating. That's exciting. And so that kind of wraps up my notes. So now I want to tell you about my studio turned gallery. So I'm going to cut over to that. And what we have here is this is the gallery space. This is the street downtown in front. I think every city has some big famous bridge in town that everybody knows. And that's ours. It's called the Grain Belt Bridge. There's a brewery there. And my gallery, my studio space now turned gallery, is in the base floor of this big condominium complex. And I didn't even know that these things could be owned, but this is actually now what's called a commercial gallery or a commercial condo. So you can actually own these spaces. Usually they're like lawyers and, you know, like nail salons and stuff. But anyway, they can be owned, which I think is awesome because then it allows freedom. That big wall right there, that's one of basically the 3 walls. So the space can look big, but also it's not that big. It's only 1,400 square feet, which is actually slightly above a small gallery. So it's kind of, you know, it's definitely not even a medium-sized space. So we have really 3 walls. There's the mural. And the idea here for this space is it's going to be underground, outsider, pop surreal, all that kind of fun stuff. And it's going to be really a space that's dedicated to artists, because I feel like for me, I've had this amazing opportunity to make a lot of art, to share my art with people, and have had the financial success that came from that. And so I actually find myself working smaller now. So I'm working at home with smaller stuff. Those little canvases you saw of the lady as she was rotating with those colors, that's an example. So I realized I need to take this space and turn it into something else. And I think that hopefully for me will be a very fun, kind of beautiful adventure of conversation, because I did a zine project a couple of years ago where I would go around and interview artists as I was traveling for work. And as I was interviewing artists, it was so nice to be able to connect and hear about other people's lives. And so hopefully the gallery will be that space. And a little bit different, you know, of course, galleries, we love to focus on the why, but then as an artist, for me, I love to focus on how, like, how do you do what you do as an artist? And so there's going to be, hopefully it'll be a little bit different, a bit of a playful space. And if you are interested, we do have a call for art right now. So the gallery is fkm.art. You won't see much there at all because we haven't opened yet, but there is a call for art right there at the top. You can click that, learn about the show. And really what it is it's about the weird drawings that we make. So I don't know about you, but like, you know, being in a sketchbook and just making strange drawings. And then when you're done, if you can even possibly see that, when you're done, just being like, what in the heck did I just draw? Like, it's weird, it's awesome. And that is what this first show is all about. Weird sketches from your sketchbook. If you have a weird drawing, please go check out the website, be part of the show. It'd be awesome to have you. It's all going to be strange, a fun way to introduce people to the space. And I would be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to say, hey, you know, get yourself a .art. It's been alluded to here, but I think everybody should. And right here on the website, fkm.art, you can click the link. We are an ambassador. We are connected. And so what you do is you load up the page. And as the page loads up, let's say you just want your name. So there it is. You type in your name, and I randomly picked Jess Maloney this morning for some reason. You hit search to see if anybody else has your name, and you know, hopefully not, probably not. Still early enough to be able to find your name, and it's going to show the price. But after you click buy now, then after it all loads, you are going to see 0. So your first year of a .art domain is 0, which I think is pretty darn awesome. There's going to be the renewal, and hey, there's holidays coming up. If any of you know somebody who is an artist and they might want their domain, their name as a domain, you can check that out too. So free for the first year. All right, that is my time. I'm going to hand it over and say thank you so much. So Anastasia, back to you.
Phil, thank you so much. This was incredible. It's true that I really enjoyed the Venn diagram and the other little diagram. I don't see that very often from artists. And just putting it out there, I'm available as a creative buddy and would like to be writing. So I'm just asking the universe.
Yeah. And thank you for that nice plug for .art. The $20 I slipped you back in the green room paid off. So that was good in the virtual green room. But yeah, the idea of the creative buddy is interesting, and you know, there were a lot of recurring themes today, I think, with all the artists who presented, but certainly one of the big ones was collaboration and engagement, you know, sharing the blogs that Nate did, you sharing those sketches, you know, all these different types of collaborations, Rob working with the students and the communities to paint. So I think that everyone really, the idea of a creative buddy is almost naturally happening. We're not just naming it that, because I think everyone wants to be a part of that. So I think that was great to highlight that. And I agree, I enjoyed your Venn diagram very much. So thank you, Phil. And Anastasia, what have we got next? This has been a great conference so far.
It's been great, and now it's about to get even greater, because we're inviting back all of our participants, the ones who could join us for the roundtable. Thank you, Sophia, Rob, Nate, great. And Phil should be, Phil's there.
Yep,
So
Phil's there.
thank you so much for all of your time and effort that you put into this. And there's already been a bit of a dialogue going on behind the scenes and in the comment section between all of you. And we would actually like to be a bit risque this time and ask for you to start off the roundtable. If you have questions for each other, please do share, because I think there is a lot of curiosity going around.
I wasn't prepared for that, but
That's a risky bit. Don't worry, I'll
Improvise.
I do have questions.
Yeah. This is engagement and collaboration and improvisation.
Yes, and giving away the keys and inviting people in.
yeah.
I have a question.
Well, Nate, I'll jump in real quick. Sorry, Rob. Nate, we were kind of chatting about this potential as I opened this gallery of this potential of a show, and I think it would be really cool, like this idea, because again, this exploration, and all of us have, kind of messed around with having people involved in some kind of a project. And it'd be really fun to see in a gallery space, like, here's the starting point, and then, this kind of menagerie of what came out of it. Like, you go from those blobs and then all of the people's contributions, I think would be a really kind of fun thing to do. And I wondered, why did you end up first doing that? Like, because you were kind of focused on your project, but then why did you open up to, hey, maybe other people want to draw that?
Yeah, I guess it seemed kind of natural to, I was posting a blank canvas to invite people up there, and it didn't seem to interfere with anything as far as like what I was trying to do, because they could both coexist, and it was mostly some people would respond with their screenshots with the drawing, and then I repost it, and then later I post mine, and then that was all there was to it. So it didn't seem like
I think it's kind of like providing a starting point, because everyone knows, whether you're a writer or a painter, staring at a blank page is the most frightening thing in the world. But if you give someone a blob to start with, or a coloring sketch like Rob was doing, or some framework that's a beginning, I think that provides some motivation for someone to not be afraid to express themselves creatively.
Yeah, for sure. And it's kind of like when you stare at the clouds forming in the sky, like, I think most of us kind of just automatically will start imagining things that way. So that's sort of like a really, really quick, like, imagination jump starter, just getting people some random shapes to stare at and wonder what it actually is, if it isn't actually anything.
I think that, Nate, you touch on a really interesting thing, because I like to talk to students about this too. When they're not uncertain about what they want to create, I always allude to the cloud as something that exists as a form or shape, but that the mind is actually trying to create some meaning out of that. And so if you approach it from like, all right, let me like adjust this chaos to what I could see the potential of it being, I think that's a really awesome starting point for getting people to get excited about like the possibilities of something totally random. And usually the creativity just skyrockets from there.
Yeah, I definitely always have a easier, like, it's not even like trying, it's just I'm automatically reacting to something if there's like a starting point where just even like when there's like an art challenge of some sort, or like, even if it's just a word prompt like that, that's always kind of gets my brain going involuntarily. So then it just becomes natural from there to like react or go against whatever I'm looking at, or go with, or try. My brain just naturally tries to find like the how can I break the rules without breaking all the rules, and goes to that far edge. So yeah, I like those rules and starting points to get going, and then also the deadline thing. We're just kind of like, okay, it gives permission in a way too, that sort of thing where it's like, okay, I didn't say I was going to post anything good. I just said I was going to post anything.
I'd like to go back a bit to the conversation that Sophia and Shantell were having, and I think there was a common thread between all of the conversations of how to balance being an artist with being in the business and managing your sort of your brand. So we have actually a question from the audience, which ties into what I want to ask. And the question was, Thea, how did you decide that it's the right time for you now to do your next MA? I believe you said it's your second MA. So my question was a bit wider. It's about how you manage your time between all those different parts of yourself. So your creative self, and then your manager self, and now you're also studying and teaching. So on a very practical level, how the hell do you do that? We recently had an artist whom I interviewed who said that he does it in seasons, actually, Alex Rigetto. He's Italian, based in New York. So he has like 3 months for painting, and then, I don't know, 2 months to go on tour, and then, I don't know, 2 more months to think about his business projects. And I think that's very tricky to manage it this way. So how do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, this is an unfolding mystery. I'm 46 and I continue to be working on this question, and I continue to be making mistakes or learning and doing well. And then I go off my system and it's like back to square one. But I think I just completely agree with Shantell's philosophy of, as artists, we need to be empowered and understand like all the aspects of our business. And like, we are the janitor, we are accounting, we are the creative, we are like business and development, and we do need to know like our weak spots. And I think for me, you know, initially when I started my project, one of the first things that I made was this cliteracy eye chart screen print. And as I was like printing it, some people in the print shop with me were like looking over my shoulder and were like, "What is that?" And I was like, "Oh, it's just a project I'm working on." And they're like, "Can I buy that? Can I have that?" And it was the first time with my work I had ever had that kind of reaction to it. And because of that, I started making t-shirts, and I started making like these very accessible products, you know, pins, stencils. And that was how I paid my studio rent, you know, and it was a great feeling, not only to be like, oh, I'm self-sustaining, I'm not like killing it in terms of like my profits, but like I'm self-sustaining, and how cool is that? But it also, for the first time, I had like direct contact with my audience. And I can't tell you the like way that my relationship with UPS changed, where I went from being like, oh, I hate going to the post office, to being like, I'm kind of delighted because I'm carrying this little bundle of packages because people bought my work and I'm sending it to them. And it gives me, for me to like have part of my day that I'm like wrapping up a necklace and sending it to someone that's like a present for their spouse, for their anniversary. Like that feels so meaningful. And sometimes the ups and downs of like, you know, how a show does, or negotiation with a dealer, or, you know, the ups and downs of like proposals can be kind of, you feel lost in like, what does it all mean and what is it? And just having that small interaction that's very direct can be incredibly gratifying. And in terms of like going back to school, so I studied photography for my first master's, and this MFA is interdisciplinary. And I think I basically bought myself time that like Shantell was talking about, of just like, she wants to explore, but like, where is the time for 6 months of exploration? And I think, you know, the hard part of it is like, you only get that time when like nothing's happening. And if nothing's happening, most of us are panicked because we're like, oh God, what's the next show? What's happening? No one's going to buy my work again, or like, that's it. And it's a very uncomfortable time. And I think like, only through going through that over and over again do you realize this is just part of like the cycle, and it's okay. And there will always be something more. But also, if you don't have something you're constantly reacting to, you can actually proactively start exploring something new. And so that's the territory that I am in. And I have to say, it's like definitely uncomfortable and scary. Like I'm so happy, but I'm also just like, oh my God, this is so uncomfortable. Like I have to do critiques like at a certain cadence according to a curriculum, and not according to my own personal desire of like, I'm ready to bring someone to my studio and I'm ready to show what I want to show. And I'm only thinking about, you know, I don't know. So now I have to like really share with a lot more people and a lot more vulnerability. And at the same time, now I have like all of this new critique and all of these new points of view. And that's very exciting, because I think in a way, like working solely in terms of like what is selling and what there is an audience for that's built in, and like having an ROI behind everything, you kind of get sort of funneled into a certain path. And I think that can be dangerous, not only creatively, but like for your soul. I mean, like for you as a human being who needs to be asking questions and needs to be like journeying in the unknown to some degree. So all that's to say, like, I guess it's just like a beautiful unfolding path that's both, you know, finding the known and also continually questioning yourself.
I think one of you said staying in the unknown, and I love that. I think that's beautiful, and that's something we should all remember, even if it's uncomfortable.
Also, as Phil sort of pointed out, like connecting the moments, so connecting those individual moments to create the whole, and that really is what life is. And each of you has shown kind of your artistic journey, different stages, the evolution as an artist. You know, and that's, you know, Steve Jobs, I think, once famously said, you know, when you look backwards, you can connect all the dots, right? It's not like you have a roadmap beforehand, but when you look backwards, you can see how, oh, if this hadn't happened, Rob, if you hadn't gone to Budapest, you wouldn't have done this. If you hadn't taken that walk in the cemetery, you know, Phil, if you hadn't had that neurological challenge, you know, which direction would your career have gone in versus where you are today? So looking backwards, it all makes perfect sense. But at the time, it's what's next? What's happening, right?
Yeah, I think downtime is super important to anybody, just to allow the brain to kind of decompress and recontextualize where you want to go. Because I mean, where we want to go when we're 22, 28 is different than when we get older. Like expectations and hopes and ideas change. And so I think we gotta allow that space away. And of course, for me, and just real quick on the just the creative side, like art is super important, but also where that art wants to go, like I want to be able to follow it rather than feel like I'm pressing it into a form that it needs to be because of expectations of myself or others. So I feel like that downtime allows that decompressing and that freedom. So
yeah, that's great. Thank you, Phil. You've all shared experiences about big collaborative projects, and that's something else I wanted to ask you about, because it's true that it's all about whether you get the creative freedom to create something that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise. But I think it's very tricky to be in a collaboration with a big institution or a brand and still be able to express your direction. So maybe from the projects that you've done, how has it been, and how do you manage to assert your creative voice in a situation where you are commissioned by somebody else who's quite big to do something? And this is an open question to any of you.
I think one of the things is having the awareness that the brand is coming to you for your expertise, and to some extent, when it comes to the art side, you know your art and you know yourself, and sticking to those guns, even when they're trying to like give you like a push in a certain way, I think helps establish yourself as the voice of expertise on the work that you do. And you just have to like keep that in mind and not let people push you around too much. But I mean, it's all a negotiation too, right? So it's like it's based on the circumstance and the goal of the brand and whether that aligns with yours. But I think it's really important to know that, like, and have trust in yourself that the work you do is, you know, the reason why they're approaching you, and you don't have to go along to everything that they're saying. So like a lot of like what Shantell was saying about looking over the contract and you know, making sure that you're being supported in the contract as the artist and that your work is being valued for what it really is. And so I've had experiences where people tell me to change some artwork, and I'm like, look, man, I've been doing this for a long time, and if I feel the need to change it, I will. But I mean, this is what we signed up for together.
Yeah, good for you. It's important to be able to push back, because as you said, they hired you for a reason. And if you allow them to water down your art, in the end, they'll be disappointed, because they'll say, well, this doesn't look like what I thought I was hiring you to do, right? That's because they ruined it, you know?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
like what Bill was saying, you this like constant like bottle being filled with everybody's different filter. It's like the alchemy is just totally off after a while. So like being able to like unscrew the cap and get rid of it and saying, "This is my bottle."
Right.
Yeah,
I was gonna. Who's going?
Oh yeah,
I was
Nate.
just gonna say that list goes for Loop. Yeah, when I get invited to do a collab, all of a sudden, because usually like, you know, those daily projects or whatever, I can be loosey goosey, do my thing to the max, and then I get invited to do something, and all of a sudden, like, you know, all the self doubt comes in, like what is the perfect thing to do for this project that, you know, aligns with everything, and then in the end, I'll probably just get really loose with it and come up with like a bunch of crazy ideas, and it works out that way. But there is that start where it all of a sudden like get all messed up on my flow. I have to start over.
And I was just going to jump in and say on the, because I've kind of run the gamut of what I've done with commercial work, and I will say I did not like commercial work. Like some people, it's fine, and some people it works out, and if there's a specific voice, but like with my work, you saw it's different all the time. So like maybe I was too much of a people pleaser, but like whenever somebody was like, you know, here's a new concept, and I'm like, oh, we could do this, and then pretty soon I'm just like pitching ideas, and you know, whether things are landing or not, or I get the job, then it always felt like, you know, you have to jump to the next job, and you know, trying to pay bills. And so I think a lot of people, because as I was doing these interviews with different artists for the zine I was doing, I met a lot of people who, when they went full time with their art, they actually hated it, because that was not, they found that instead of doing, you know, their free time was drawing, now all of their time was spent doing marketing, promotion, and sending stuff out. So like, that's the other side of it too. And that's okay. You know, however we can keep art in our lives, I think it's important to find that space. So.
And I think even Shantell mentioned, you know, you have to understand, you have to be self-aware and understand what are the things that you're good at, and what are the things that you're not good at, and then either learn more about those things you're not, or surround yourself with people who can fill those gaps, you know, for you. And we see in our own experience with the artists that we encounter, you know, some are really good at marketing, really strong at marketing, and then others really don't want to have anything to do with it, and that they need someone else to do their marketing for them, for example.
Yeah, I believe she said that you should do an audit of your strengths and weaknesses, which almost sounded like a SWOT analysis from business. But I guess it's just, you have to be honest with yourself and then write it on a little piece of paper that nobody else has to see, and just deal with it. I found that fascinating as advice. I do have one more question. It's about, as we were talking before we went online, it turns out that we're all in different parts of the world, and you guys have worked in different environments and traveled. And I loved Rob's story about going to Budapest and finding sort of new inspiration. So as much as all of you have your individual styles that you carry, of course, with you anywhere you go, changing environments, how much does it change what you do, and how do you incorporate your work into different cultural contexts? And was there ever a really significant aha moment just because you changed the environment? I don't know, Sophia, maybe you are now in the fields with cows and it's beautiful and it's inspiring you in a different way.
Yeah, I'm not milking cows yet, but I will say I did an artist residency this summer with the Digital Stone Project in Garfagnana, Italy, in Tuscany. And I had the incredible privilege of getting to carve marble, go to the quarries, go to these fabrication spaces, and see the way that marble was traditionally carved and how copies traditionally were made, and then also learn about the new technologies that use robots to CNC the initial path of milling, even though all the fine work has to be done by hand. But it was very, very exciting, and I mean, stressful to not, to be doing something that's so old and so special and not know what I'm doing. But I mean, the material, like I have like a chunk of my marble that I brought back in my suitcase, and it got a little bit dinged, but it's like, I was like, I just need to bring this with me. The sculpture I'll show you guys like a little picture of
I love that you brought a block of marble all the way from Italy.
So the sculpture that I made, which is like still in progress, it's the first time that I worked on my birth experience and about the like the C-section and the experience of having someone like invade my body in order to save me and my child, and that kind of paradoxical sense of like being injured and also being cared for. And so being in this new environment, it really gave me the permission to work on something that is totally outside of my knowledge base, and also just to like, yeah, take a risk. But also there was something just very meaningful about being in a place with so much art history and a canon of incredible art about motherhood, about you know, the saints and Jesus and all of these kinds of representations that we've grown up with, but then to place myself within that context and try to say, well, what does that mean for me as this queer woman who, you know, is talking about this from a feminist lens and is like critical about many of these histories? What does that mean for me to position myself within this context? So I think it was a very special experience. Like it couldn't have happened in New York, you know, and I'm really grateful I got to do that.
Thanks for sharing that. I know that you have to go teach your class, so thank you so much for taking part. And it's all about juggling time, as we mentioned before. Jeff, do you have any other questions for our participants?
Well, I think, you know, since it's International Artist Day, and I think many of the people who have joined us for the conference today are artists themselves, either aspiring artists, professional artists, dreaming of being an artist. I'm curious, like, you know, what advice would each of you have for someone who is, you know, doing their doodles in the side, but really wants to take their doodles to the next step and actually see if they can pursue a more serious passion for their art?
Oh, and while you're thinking, sorry, there is a question from the audience that kind of ties into that. If we have time, I have a question. When did you first call yourself artist? So I think it does tie into the advice topic. So if you can answer two at the same time, that would be great.
Who's going?
Whoever wants to dive in first.
I'll dive in. I think especially like some of the things spoken about before about being aware of this side of artwork too comes from just an angle of being really motivated to educate yourself on the different aspects of it. And I think we're super lucky to live in a world now where everything's at your fingertips. So in any spare time you have is like an opportunity to level up your knowledge about marketing and listen to other artists about how they've done it and try to find a way to tell your own story through this new knowledge. And then I would say that the first time I decided I was an artist was like when I first worked on my signature to actually sign a drawing where it was just like handed out. But once I got my signature down, it kind of created an identity for like my name and my brand. And I think that's like one of the first steps is just like start signing your work and maybe making little labels for it that describe the work so that like it becomes part of the archival process of your development as a person and artist.
Love that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't even know how to tell somebody to get started besides just get started. Because yeah, I think it could be as simple as just like taking the pencil and hitting the paper and start moving your hand or wherever the craft is. That's definitely step one. And then I think also just you know, if you think part of it is just also sharing it with the world and you know, whether it's just to get the feedback from a friend to be like, hey, do you think this is good enough? Or
From your creative buddy, feedback from a buddy.
Yeah, or from a buddy. Yeah, the buddy's great. Yeah, I think that's step two, because I think, you know, I think it can go both ways. Some people are amazing and they have no confidence at all. I'm like, what are you doing? Just put it all out there. And then other people have approached me and and they'll be like, no, I think you need to cook that in the oven a little bit. If you want to do XYZ, you need to go back to square one, or go back a couple steps and work on your craft here to get up to this level if you want to do XYZ professionally. But when it comes to fine art, you can be way more wide open there. And then to go back to when I first called myself an artist, I don't know, maybe I was just always confident because I don't even know when that starting line was. It was just always there, and grade school just was always about it. And I think I made a specific artist signature too when I was like in like fourth grade or something like that. And then I want show of hands from you guys. Is your artist signature totally different than like the way you sign checks or documents?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't want them knowing that much about me.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, when you become famous, then
your
your canceled checks will be works of art themselves if they're signed, right?
Yeah. I don't have canceled.
There was a period
No one
where I
has canceled checks anymore.
Yeah, there's a period where I was signing checks with my art signature and then like signing paintings with my other signature, and I kind of just like went back and forth, and then eventually I was like, no, this should just be separate. I know it's done.
And I'll kind of jump in and say yes and to a couple of those. So obviously yes to all the suggestions from before. But one of the things that I think is really important to be able to step out with your art is to also try to, on the financial side, is to have money in the bank, because anytime you're taking risks, it's really important to be able to have a savings. And this kind of ties into when I thought of myself as an artist. Like, I actually didn't think of myself as an artist until late 20s, probably like 28 years old. And I was even like making viral videos that were going online and making just tons of content. But I'm like, an artist is not me. Like, I'm making things, I'm making pictures, I'm making stuff, but I'm not an artist. So like, it took me a while to kind of even accept that kind of an identity. But then really the coming back to the money thing and just being able to have money in the bank. Like, if you have, if you're selling stuff, and that's awesome. Like, I had a couple months when I was selling posters where there was one month where I made $12,000 selling posters. A year later, I made like $150 selling posters. So like, hoarding your money is really important because it can then even out. So the ebb and flow of creativity, of life, of money is always kind of going in the artist's life. So having money in the bank to just kind of make things even is really, really important. So that's my other little thing.
Yeah, or just keep your day job. I've almost my entire art career have just had a day job and done everything on the side.
I think a lot of people think that artists don't have day jobs. Like, yes, 99% do. Yeah.
Yeah. But the tools, as I think, Rob, you said, the tools for anyone to pursue art now, and that's any art, whether it's filmmaking, writing, music, the tools are so much more accessible. I think, Nate, you said most of what you showed us today was done on an iPad, right?
Yep. Yeah, because
it's
most of the time it
amazing,
was.
right? That's
yeah, it was. I had to fit in my commute to work one way or the other, and it's easier for me to do finish work digitally. But there've been times where I've been on the train doing work for a physical art show, like on the subway, arm around the pole. There's no seating room. I have like a 6-inch painting, and I'm drawing with Posca markers, trying to finish the piece for like the end of the week or something.
You and Rob need to exchange or write a little handbook on how to draw steady on its subway, on a New York City subway, right?
Yeah, it's an art in itself for sure.
Ends. The middle is it moves a little less. So if you could imagine that.
Oh, right.
So
that's wild.
pick your spot in the middle.
Yeah,
So
you just get good sea legs. I don't know.
Phil, your whole art career is that you've embraced the shake, and it's sort of like, one thing might come across as a flaw, but in your case, you had this faith in yourself and confidence that it's totally your advantage and your uniqueness. And I think that's like completely human. And it's something that, maybe you don't have the straightest lines, but there's still character in your lines that makes it interesting and unique. And the most perfect thing is our individual imperfections. So when thinking about your life and career as an artist and your direction, that sometimes your weaknesses are your greatest strengths, and comes with a level of self-awareness to realize that, and encouragement from others and yourself.
Yeah, Yeah, and I feel like I put a lot of emphasis on my craft in general, or like I get totally sucked into that side of it. But and there are also those days where I have like 5 minutes to draw something, and that's what goes out, and sometimes that's what people resonate with the most. And I think that kind of just speaks to that, like you're not necessarily there to make like the most perfect thing, but you're there to express yourself and connect with people on that human level.
Yeah, and you never know what's going to connect with someone, and oftentimes what you think is not the thing, or different perspectives people have make one piece that you were disappointed in their favorite piece of your work. And that's always the mystery of art, right? Because it's the beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? Well, terrific. I think this is a great way to wrap it up. Thanks, Rod, for that kind of nice summation there. That was terrific. On behalf of the entire .art team and hopefully everyone who's been joining us for this conference, I want to thank all of you and the others who were here before. This has been really inspiring and informative and just a wonderful way to celebrate International Artists Day. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It was awesome to hear.
Happy to have been here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
And thanks everyone for joining us for this International Artist Day conference. You can always find out more about .art at www.art.art. We really appreciate you spending a few hours with us on this International Artist Day. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.